April 15th, 1945. The war was dying, but men were still killing. Captain William Carter stood at the periscope of the USS Shadowfin, his knuckles white against the cold steel. Through the lens he could see her, a Japanese I-400 class submarine, massive and wounded, limping through the gray water like a dying whale. "Range, 3,000 yards, Lieutenant James Halloway called out from the plotting table. His voice was steady, professional. He had learned not to feel any more. Carter's jaw tightened. "Fire solution?" "Locked, sir. Tubes 1 and 2 ready." The control room held its breath. 43 men suspended in a moment of terrible anticipation. Carter had made this decision 17 times before. It never got easier. It just got quieter inside. "Fire 1." The submarine shuddered as the torpedo launched, racing through the dark water toward its target. Carter kept his eye pressed to the periscope, watching, waiting. 20 seconds, 30 seconds. The explosion lit up the ocean like a camera flash. The Japanese submarine buckled in the middle, her hull splitting open like a crushed can. Men were probably screaming inside. Drowning, burning, dying. Carter felt nothing. He had stopped feeling a long time ago. "Direct hit, sir," Halloway reported. "She's going down." Through the periscope, Carter watched the enemy submarine sink. She went down fast, nose first, her propellers still spinning uselessly in the air before she vanished into the depths. 500 meters, 1,000, gone. "Secure from battle stations," Carter said quietly. "Resume patrol course." As he stepped away from the periscope, something caught his attention, a sound, or maybe the absence of sound. The sonar operator, Marcus Webb, was staring at his screen with an expression Carter had never seen before. Not fear, not confusion. Something worse. "Sir, I'm still getting a reading." Carter moved to the sonar station. "Explain." Webb's hands trembled as he adjusted his headphones. "The contact, sir. The submarine we just sank. I'm still tracking her acoustic signature. Same engine pattern, same depth. She should be at the bottom by now." Halloway laughed nervously. "Equipment malfunction. Has to be." "Check it again," Carter ordered, his voice hard. Webb worked the controls, his face growing paler. "Sir, I'm showing the contact at bearing 270, range 4,000 yards. She's circling us." The control room went silent, the kind of silence that presses against your eardrums and makes your heart too loud in your chest. "That's impossible," Halloway whispered. Carter stared at the sonar screen, and for the first time in 18 months, he felt something. Cold, creeping dread. "Take us down to 300 meters, Carter said. "Silent running, now." The USS Shadowfin descended into darkness. The hull groaned and creaked under the pressure, metal singing its protest song. Red emergency lights cast everything in a bloody glow. Carter stood motionless in the control room, listening. In submarines, you learn to trust your ears more than your eyes. Sound was truth. Sound was survival. "Depth 280 meters, Halloway reported. "Hull integrity holding." "Contact status?" Carter asked. Webb shook his head slowly. "Lost her, sir. She just vanished. 1 second she was there, the next, nothing. No debris field, no breaking up noises. Just gone." Chief Petty Officer Frank Morrison entered the control room, wiping oil from his weathered hands. At 47, he was the oldest man on the boat, a veteran who had seen things he never talked about. "Captain, we've got a problem in the aft torpedo room." "What kind of problem?" Morrison's jaw worked like he was chewing words he didn't want to say. "Water on the deck, sir. A lot of it, but there's no leak. Pumps are dry, hull's intact, but there's water everywhere. Salt water." Carter and Morrison exchanged a look. In that look was 30 years of naval experience, of understanding that sometimes the ocean did things that couldn't be explained. "Show me." They moved through the narrow corridors, ducking through circular hatches. The submarine was a maze of steel and shadows, every space cramped and claustrophobic. As they walked, Carter noticed something else. It was cold, colder than it should be. The aft torpedo room was a scene of controlled chaos. 3 sailors stood a rabot, puddles of seawater, their faces confused and frightened. Rodriguez, the senior torpedo mate, stepped forward. "Sir, it just appeared. We were checking the Mark 14s in tubes 3 and 4, and suddenly the deck was wet. We checked every seal, every valve. Nothing's leaking, but the water keeps coming." Carter knelt and touched the water. Ice cold. He brought his fingers to his nose. Salt. Definitely seawater. But Morrison was right. Every seal was dry, every valve closed. "Where's it coming from?" Holloway asked, looking around frantically. They all saw it then. Wet footprints, leading from the puddle to the bulkhead door. Small footprints. Barefoot, and they were still forming, one after another, as if something invisible was walking away. Rodriguez crossed himself. "Madre de Dios. Belay that superstitious nonsense," Carter snapped, but his voice lacked conviction. He followed the footprints with his eyes. They led down the corridor toward our crew quarters, getting fainter, then disappearing entirely. "Sir," Webb's voice crackled over the intercom, urgent and shaking. "You need to get back to the control room, right now." Carter ran. Behind him, he could hear the crew murmuring, their voices rising in pitch. Fear spread faster than fire on a submarine. When he burst into the control room, Webb was standing away from his station, staring at his sonar screen like it might bite him. "Talk to me, Webb." "Sir, I'm picking up sounds, not engine sounds, not machinery. Voices, sir. Human voices coming from below us, from the deep." Holloway grabbed the headphones and pressed them to his ears. His face went white. "My God." Carter took the headphones. For a moment, he heard only the ambient sounds of the ocean, the distant groan of tectonic plates, the whisper of current. Then, underneath it all, he heard them. Voices, faint, distorted, speaking in Japanese. Dozens of them. Hundreds, singing, chanting, screaming. And one voice, louder than the rest, speaking words that made Carter's blood freeze. "Shadowfin, we're coming home." The first light went out in the galley. Just a pop and a flash, then darkness. Baker, the cook, was alone when it happened. When Morrison found him 10 minutes later, Baker was huddled in the corner, rocking back and forth, mumbling about hands, cold hands reaching out of the shadows. The second light went out in crew quarters. Rodriguez was there, trying to sleep. He swore he heard breathing next to his bunk, wet, ragged breathing. When the light died, he felt something drip onto his face. Water. Cold. Tasting of salt and rot. By the third light, panic was setting in. Carter called an emergency meeting in the control room. His senior staff gathered. Holloway, Morrison, the chief engineer Patterson, and the medical officer, Dr. Reeves. "Gentlemen, we need to address what's happening," Carter began, choosing his words carefully. "The crew is frightened. They're talking about ghosts, curses, supernatural events." "Because that's exactly what this is," Rodriguez said from the doorway. He had been listening. Behind him, more crew members gathered. "We killed them, Captain. We sent them to the bottom, and now they want revenge." "That's enough," Morrison barked. "Get back to your stations." Rodriguez didn't move. Neither did the others. Carter could see it in their eyes. The fragile thread of discipline was fraying. "We sank an enemy submarine," Carter said firmly. "What we're experiencing is equipment malfunction, possibly combined with stress and exhaustion." "Dr. Reeves, your assessment?" The doctor, a thin man with nervous hands, cleared his throat. "Psychologically speaking, extended submarine duty creates extreme pressure. Hallucinations are not uncommon. The human mind, when confined, can create—" "I didn't hallucinate those footprints," Rodriguez interrupted. "We all saw them." "There's a rational explanation," Holloway insisted, but his voice wavered. Carter noticed his XO's hands were shaking. All the lights went out at once. Complete, total, absolute darkness. For 3 seconds, nothing. Then emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in dim red. In those 3 seconds of darkness, every man had felt it. A presence, many presences, moving through the submarine like cold wind. Webb screamed. Everyone turned. The sonar operator was pointing at his screen, his finger trembling. Contact! Multiple contacts! Surrounding us! Carter pushed through to the sonar station. On the screen, dozens of signatures appeared in a perfect circle around the Shadowfin. Not moving, just waiting. Range? Carter demanded. 100 meters, sir, all around us. They're at our depth. Holloway grabbed the periscope controls. Surface! We need to surface now. No, Morrison shouted. We're in enemy waters. We surface. We're dead for sure. Carter wasn't listening to either of them. He was staring at the depth gauge, watching the needle drop. 280 meters, 300, 320. We're sinking, he said quietly. And nobody's touching the controls. Patterson, the engineer, rushed to the ballast controls. He worked them frantically. Tanks are empty, sir. We should be ascending, but we're going down. The hull groaned. Metal shrieked. The submarine was being pulled deeper, as if invisible hands had grabbed it and were dragging it toward the bottom. 350 meters, 380, 400. We're past crush depth, Holloway screamed. The hull can't take this. Carter's mind raced. Every instinct, every year of training told him this was impossible. Impossible or not, they were seconds from imploding. He remembered something. The last transmission from the Japanese submarine before it sank. He had heard it on the radio, garbled and desperate. One word, repeated over and over. Forgive, forgive, forgive. Carter grabbed the radio microphone. His hand was steady, even though his heart hammered against his ribs. This is Captain William Carter of the USS Shadowfin. To the crew of the I-400. He paused, the words catching in his throat. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what we did. I'm sorry for your deaths. We were following orders. We were at war, but you were men, just like us. Fathers, sons, brothers. The submarine continued to sink. 420 meters. 440. Please, Carter continued, and now his voice broke. Please forgive us. We were all just trying to survive. We were all just trying to go home. Silence. The kind of silence that exists at the bottom of the ocean, where light has never reached and life has never been. The submarine stopped sinking. Webb stared at his screen, tears streaming down his face. They're leaving. The contacts. They're descending, going deeper. They're letting us go. The hull groaned one last time, a sound like a sigh, and then the Shadowfin began to rise. Slowly, gently, as if unseen hands were now lifting them toward the surface instead of pulling them down. The Shadowfin broke through the surface at dawn. The ocean was calm, almost peaceful, painted in shades of pink and gold by the rising sun. Carter stood on the conning tower, breathing fresh air for the first time in 4 days, watching the horizon. The crew was quiet, subdued. They moved through their duties mechanically, speaking in whispers, avoiding each other's eyes. Whatever they had experienced in the depths had changed them all. Dr. Reeves approached Carter with his medical log. Sir, I've examined the crew. Physically, everyone's fine. But psychologically, I'm recommending 30% of the crew for psychiatric evaluation when we reach port. What we experienced down there. The trauma, we don't talk about what happened down there, Carter interrupted. Not in reports, not to command, not to each other. Is that clear? Reeves nodded slowly. Sir, what do we tell them? What do we put in the log? Carter stared at the ocean. Somewhere below, at the bottom of the Pacific, lay the wreckage of the I-400 and the bodies of her crew. Young men, just like his, who had families waiting for them, who had dreams and fears and lives unlived. We tell them we experienced equipment malfunctions due to extreme depth, Carter said. We tell them the mission was compromised and we returned to base. We tell them nothing else. Something caught his eye, floating in the water, just off the port bow, a life preserver. Japanese, faded by sun and salt, and attached to it, a waterlogged photograph. Morrison saw it too. Without a word, he retrieved it with a boat hook and brought it to Carter. The photograph was nearly destroyed by water, but Carter could still make out the image. A young Japanese sailor, barely 20, standing next to an older woman. His mother, perhaps. Both were smiling. On the back, in careful English script, someone had written, Takeshi Yamamoto, age 19, Tokyo. Carter held the photograph carefully, as if it were made of glass. He thought of Ellen back home in Boston. He thought of all the mothers, American and Japanese, who would never see their sons again. "Sir," Halloway's voice pulled him back. "Orders?" Carter looked at his XO. Halloway had aged a decade in 4 days. They all had. "Set course for Pearl Harbor," Carter said quietly. "And Lieutenant?" "Sir?" "When we get back, I'm recommending you for your own command. You've earned it." Halloway stared at him. "Sir, after what happened, I don't know if I can—" "You can," Carter said firmly. "Because you have to. Because there's still a war to win. When you get your own boat, remember this moment. Remember that the men we kill, they haunt us. They should haunt us. The day they don't is the day we become monsters." 3 months later, August 1945. Carter stood in his quarters reading the telegram that would change everything. The war was over. Japan had surrendered. After 4 years of blood and death and horror, it was finally over. He should have felt relief, joy, something. All he felt was tired. There was a knock on his door. "Come." Marcus Webb entered, no longer the frightened kid from Ohio. The experience in the depths had hardened him, aged him. "Sir, thought you'd want to know. The Yamato mission, the one we were supposed to complete. Intelligence says she was already at the bottom before we would have reached the strike zone. Sunk by aircraft 2 days earlier. Our mission was pointless." Carter nodded slowly. He had suspected as much. "Sometimes the war machine keeps grinding even after the battle's over, Webb." "Sir, permission to speak freely?" "Granted." Webb sat down uninvited, a breach of protocol Carter let slide. "Do you ever think about them? The Japanese crew?" "Every day." "Do you think they were really there? That it really happened? Or did we all just crack?" Carter considered the question carefully. "Does it matter? Real or not, we experienced something that changed us. We came face to face with the cost of what we do, the lives we take. That's real enough." Webb nodded, satisfied with the answer. He stood to leave, then paused at the door. "Sir, there's something else. Baker, the cook, he claims he found something strange yesterday. In the galley, where the first light went out, a small object wrapped in cloth." "What kind of object?" Webb pulled a small bundle from his pocket and placed it on Carter's desk. "He asked me to give it to you." After Webb left, Carter unwrapped the cloth with careful fingers. Inside was a small wooden figure, hand-carved, worn smooth by handling. A Japanese good luck charm, the kind a sailor might carry for protection. On the base, carved in tiny letters, was a name, Takeshi Yamamoto. The same name from the photograph, the 19-year-old from Tokyo. Carter held the figure and understood. This was proof. This was real. The ghosts had been real. Or perhaps, he thought, setting the figure carefully on his desk where he could see it every day. Perhaps the real ghosts were the ones who survived, the ones who had to live with what they had done. 20 years after the war, Captain William Ironhand Carter, now retired, stood on the deck of a civilian research vessel. His hair was white, his face deeply lined. His eyes were the same, sharp, observant, haunted. The vessel was anchored directly above the coordinates where the USS Shadowfin had sunk the I-400 2 decades earlier. Carter had spent years planning this moment, saving money, calling in favors, assembling a team willing to help an old man chase ghosts. Dr. Sarah Chen, a marine archaeologist, approached with underwater camera footage. "Captain Carter, we found her, the I-400. She's in remarkable condition for 20 years underwater." Carter watched the grainy footage. The submarine lay on her side in the silt, covered in coral and anemones. Fish swam through her torn hull. She had become part of the ocean floor, a tomb for the 73 men who went down with her. "There's something else," Dr. Chen continued, her voice uncertain. "Something unusual. You should see this." She played another segment of footage. The camera had entered the submarine through the damaged section, moving through corridors where men had once lived and worked and died. Everything was covered in sediment and marine growth. The camera panned across the control room, and Carter's breath caught. On the wall, scratched into the metal with what must have been desperate, dying hands, was a message in English. To the crew of the Shadowfin, we understand. War makes killers of us all. We forgive you. Go home to your families. Live the lives we cannot. Remember us. That is all we ask. Below the message were names, dozens of them. The entire crew of the I-400, each man signing his name before the water took him. Carter felt tears on his face for the first time since the war. They wrote it before they died. They knew they were finished, and they used their last moments to forgive us. Dr. Chen nodded quietly. There's more, Captain. We found evidence that the submarine didn't sink from your torpedo alone. She was already damaged. There was an internal explosion, probably a battery fire. She was going down anyway. Your torpedo just finished it faster, made it quicker, more merciful in a way. All these years, Carter realized. All these years of guilt, of nightmares, of ghosts. They had been trying to tell him something. Not revenge, forgiveness. Can you retrieve the message? Carter asked. The wall panel? It's extremely fragile, but yes, I believe so. Why? Because I'm going to have it mounted at the Naval Academy, Carter said, so every young officer who thinks war's glory can see it, can understand the price, the real price. The wall panel now hangs in the U.S. Naval Academy Museum in Annapolis. Thousands of cadets see it every year. Most don't know the full story. They read the names, and they read the message, and something in them changes. Captain William Carter died in 1992 at the age of 88. His last words to his grandson, who had just been accepted to Annapolis, were, "The men you kill in war don't become your enemies. They become your ghosts. Treat them with honor." The USS Shadowfin was decommissioned in 1947 and scrapped in 1949. Sailors who served on her later boats reported strange occurrences. Wet footprints in dry corridors, voices speaking Japanese in the deep, lights that flickered when they passed certain coordinates. Some say the Shadowfin is still down there, in the depths, patrolling the same waters. On quiet nights, when the ocean is calm, submarines passing through that region report sonar contacts that shouldn't exist, acoustic signatures of vessels that sank decades ago. The captains of these submarines always give the same order: silent running, show respect, keep moving. They understand what Carter learned in 1945. The ocean remembers, the deep never forgets. The men who die at sea don't truly rest. They wait, they watch. They remind us that every life taken in war is a life that mattered. The ghosts aren't there to punish us. They're there to make sure we never forget what war truly costs. In 2018, a deep-sea exploration team returned to the wreck of the I-400. They found something that hadn't been there in the 1965 expedition. Inside the control room, arranged carefully on the navigation table, were 43 objects, personal items, dog tags, photographs, letters, all American, all from the crew of the USS Shadowfin. Items that had been lost during that terrible night in April 1945 when the ghosts came. The Japanese crew had been collecting them, protecting them, preserving the memory of the men who had killed them. In the end, beneath the flags and the uniforms and the orders, they had all been the same. Men far from home, scared, hoping to survive, hoping to be remembered. The ocean had brought them together in death. In that darkness, 300 meters down, they had found something that the living world seemed to have forgotten: humanity, forgiveness, peace. The ghosts weren't haunting the Shadowfin. They were protecting her crew. They still are. If you ever find yourself on a submarine in the deep, dark waters of the Pacific, and you hear voices that shouldn't be there, remember this story. Remember Captain Carter. Remember Takeshi Yamamoto. The ocean remembers everything. Sometimes, if you listen carefully, the dead will teach the living how to forgive.